How many of us are aware of an upcoming election? Okay, now how many of us have an opinion on the Electoral College? In recent years, there has been an uproar over the outcomes of the elections and the role of the Electoral College has in the process. Today, I would like to use this time to explain the controversy of reforming the Electoral College using research from the National Archives and Records Administration, the Journal Gazette, Pew Research Center, and Gale Opposing Viewpoints online collection, to name a few. First, I will begin with explaining how the Electoral College came to be. Then I'll explain why some people want to abolish the Electoral College. Third, we will explore the idea of keeping the Electoral College. And finally, the final view, which is reforming of the Electoral College. In order to understand the Electoral College controversy, we must first understand what it is. The Electoral College was established by Article 2, Section 1 in the Constitutional Convention, 1787. After the failure of the previous constitution, the Electoral College allowed a solution to be made in the 3/5 compromise in order to appease the southern and northern states. Yet, over the years, there has been uproar amongst the people due to the election process. For example, as stated by Red Bluff Daily News in 2016, that although Hillary Clinton received up to 2 million more votes than Donald Trump, she lost due to not having enough Electoral College votes. This, however, is not the only instance where the popular vote was canceled out by the Electoral College. Instances include George W.B. Bush versus Al Gore, Rutherford B. Hayes versus Samuel Tilden, and Benjamin Harrison versus Grover Cleveland, as stated by the Frequently Asked Questions page of the National Archives. Whether this is an issue or not is reflected in the next 3 viewpoints. The key belief for those who wish to keep the Electoral College is that it is necessary for making sure that the southern states are still represented. In a letter, Electoral College by Arizona Daily Star, published in 2020, it states, reforming the Electoral College, which, like the U.S. Senate, is prescribed by the Constitution and dilutes the voting strength of more populous states, raises the contentious issue of reforming the Senate itself. This is all a wordy way of saying that if a person is arguing to reform or abolish the Electoral College, they may as well argue to abolish the Senate as well. Therefore, in order to abolish the Electoral College, legislation would also have to be passed to reform the Senate so that they could still maintain their power. Overall, those that wish to keep the Electoral College believe it is a necessity in keeping federalism part of the USA, not the democracy. As Robert Tanner of the Journal Gazette writes in his article entitled, Parties Electors Split on Scrapping Electoral College. If it was a pure popular vote, the election would be all about the biggest cities and biggest states, and the rest of the country would be forgotten. In another view, some say that the Electoral College no longer benefits the country. Therefore, it is in their view that the Electoral College ought to be abolished as a whole. One reason being the establishment of the Electoral College causes candidates to solely focus on swing states rather than on people as a whole. Amanda Wilcox from the Wake Forest University writes in the article, Fixing the Electoral College is pro-democracy reform, that instead of candidates focusing on a small handful of the so-called battleground states that are closely divided between Democrats and Republicans, they ought to focus on the population as a whole. Further reasoning against the Electoral College as a whole is that the more people involved, the more polarizing the Electoral College votes. In recent studies to predict the upcoming election, researchers found that higher voter turnout could potentially result in a boost for President Trump in the key states of Michigan, Pennsylvania, and especially Wisconsin by bringing out more of the Trump base. In a study by Dean Spears, Ishana Talisara, and Michael Guerrero from the University of Texas shared that when presidential elections are close, there is a probability of inversion by 40%, meaning that the closer the presidential candidate is for being elected, the lower the chance there is for the Electoral College to vote for them. Furthermore, the fact is, the actual results don't matter to the model. This quote by Stephen Carter from the Milford Daily News continues to state that the model actually accounts for the distribution of Electoral College votes across states and the concentration of political affiliation in particular regions, not just now, but through history. Therefore, the purpose of the Electoral College is to, in fact, increase the chances of votes for the opposing candidate. Having the Electoral College thought of this way further pushes this group to want to abolish the college. To make things a little more clear, the author goes on to say that the researchers estimate that under current conditions, a Republican who narrowly loses the popular vote has a 65% chance of winning the election. This fact and others stated are just a few of the reasons why some citizens wish to completely abolish the Electoral College. The final point of view of whether the Electoral College should be reformed believe the best solution is a compromise to the previous two extremes. This would occur by keeping the Electoral College by remodeling it so its power effectively represents the people. A statement in the Washington Post by E.G. Dionne Jr. states that the Electoral College was supposed to be made of civic leaders, not political hacks. It was supposed to safeguard the nation should the uninformed masses elect a person unfit for office. In saying so, he established the importance of the Electoral College and the effectiveness it would have if it was reformed. This view has led to legislations being started within states in hopes of balancing the discrepancies. The states should proportion their votes with the election results rather than giving all the votes to the winning candidate, which in extreme can ignore the votes of up to 49% of their constituents. 49%. Or, in other words, nearly half of the wishes of the voters. In the state of Maine, they are taking action in hopes of reforming the Electoral College. Tuesday, after its Senate passed a bill to overhaul the Pine Tree State chooses a U.S. president, and how the Pine Tree State chooses a U.S. president. The article continues on to say that the bill would force state electors to vote for the candidate that wins the national popular vote. With reforms such as these, this point of view is acting to change the Electoral College without affecting the Senate, an issue that was addressed in why the Electoral College should be kept. Another reform with this same intent is the National Popular Vote Plan. In the election of 2012, the Electoral College needs reforming, published the San Antonio, Texas News. It continues to say that it is a compact that would not require any constitutional changes and would pledge state electoral votes to the winner of the national popular vote. Although this news article is a bit old, it still points to the effort of pro-electoral reformers and the way they have tried to make it around the problems established in the other points of views. Looking at all the facts of this case, the conclusion can be made that the ideology of this point of view is that although there are problems with the Electoral College, there are really realistic steps that can be made that keeps the Senate intact. In summary, the Electoral College has caused a fuss over the recent years. However, at the end of the day, 3 points of view remain: keeping, abolishing, or reforming the Electoral College. By understanding the reasoning behind each viewpoint, a citizen such as yourself can be better prepared for voting or simply making informed statements in everyday conversation.